Hello and welcome to the Serious About Rugby League show. This is our third episode and we're building nicely. So if you could give this video a like and subscribe to the channel, that'd be much appreciated. I'm Will Jackson. Joining me today is Peter Smith, Leeds Rhinos reporter for the Yorkshire Evening Post. And we've got Sam Brocksom and Sam Cook, who are writers for Serious About Rugby League. We've just had the penultimate round of Super League fixtures. And there was a couple of surprise results, really, wasn't there? Obviously, Catalans went to Headingley and won. Wakefield stunned Hull KR at Bellevue. Elsewhere, Wigan thumped Cass. Hull FC beat, I must say, a really poor Warrington team. Leigh they absolutely battered St Helens, really. And Huddersfield beat Salford. So, Pete, we'll start with you. Obviously, tell us about Leeds and what went wrong for you there then.
Do we have to, Will? Leeds just had an off day. I don't know what everyone's going to say. Well, they're a one-man team. They can't play without Jake Connor. And on the evidence of last Thursday, that's right. I don't actually think they are a one-man team, but they've certainly played like it this week. No Connor, no bite in attack. They defended okay, conceded two pretty soft tries, really. One a missed tackle from acting half, and the other where the ball hit the metalwork and bounced back to an attacker when Catalans had tried for a drop goal. But Leeds didn't get over the line until the last 15 minutes. Never got their attacking game into gear. Were very flat compared with the recent performances. It looked very much like the way they were playing in the opening few games of the season or even last season. Really disappointing performance for a Thursday night in front of a big crowd, 15,000 in the last home league game. Fortunately, from Leeds' point of view, it didn't matter when Leigh did them a favour by beating Saints the following night, but they're going to have to improve considerably, I think, to do anything in the playoffs. But having said that, people were beginning to talk Leeds up, weren't they? The hype train was starting to run, and I think maybe it'll just be a little bit of a reality check to show where they still are. They're still not quite at the level probably of Wigan and Hull KR in terms of consistency. Brad Arthur said after the game that all Leeds' defeats are the same, and he's exactly right. They've all the games they've lost this year have looked the same. Leeds lacking patience and composure with the ball, and that was the case again on Thursday, sadly.
Yeah, is there anything to take out of the fact that it came 2 weeks ago before the playoffs and you get that bad result out of the way?
Well, maybe, but you're better off. I think you're better off going into the playoffs on a good winning run. They'd won 5 on the trot before that. 6 would have been the best sequence for quite some time. They've lost a little bit of momentum, so I think it was just a bad night all round for Leeds. And Catalans, they're not a pretty team to watch. The spoiling tactics were effective though, and they deserved the win on balance of play. I mean, it was 2 tries each, but Catalan just seemed more up for it for some reason.
Yeah, Sam. I mean, I know you both watched this, both Sams, but I mean, just how badly was Jake Connor missed, and what's the latest with his injury?
Yeah, I'll go. Yeah, I mean they did miss Jake. They missed Jake civilly. They put Jackson Field in the house, and he's just not got that ability yet to control the team like Jake does. I do think he was not helped by Brodie Croft having another off game. When Jake plays well, Brodie plays well. But I don't think Brodie has that instinct to take a game by the scruff of the neck and win it for his team like Jake does. In terms of injury, obviously the rib injury he got last week, he might miss next week, especially given the fact that Leeds have guaranteed a home playoff. But yeah, I think if he misses Wigan next week, I don't see Leeds winning that next week.
Sam C, would you? I mean, with Leeds more than likely looking at fourth now, would you rest players going into that final game if you were Brad Arthur, or would you try and go in there with some sort of momentum?
I think Brad Arthur strikes me as a sort of coach who probably wants his immediate response. I'm not sure that he'll rest players. I don't think he's going to take unnecessary risks either. I don't think necessarily we're going to see Jake Connor, but I don't think he's going to make wholesale changes. I mean, I think probably Leeds and Hull KR are probably two of the teams have used the fewest number of players. They don't really vary it that much, despite Leeds having a lot of injuries this season. I think he kind of knows what he likes and likes what he knows, and I think that's probably how he'll approach it. And I think regardless of whether they win or lose against Wigan, all he's really going to be bothered about is performance, because like you said, the result it's not really going to impact it, because we expect Leigh will win. But I think he just needs a performance, because Thursday night was shocking, really.
Yeah, Pete, you were shaking your head there.
Yeah, I don't think he'll rest people. When Leeds played West Warriors in the Challenge Cup way back in February, first game of the season, he played his strongest team against an amateur team. I just don't think that's in Brad Arthur's makeup, and I don't think it'd be the right thing to do anyway. They need to get last week's performance put behind them and go into the playoffs on the back of a good result and a good performance. I don't think resting people will achieve anything, really. Players can get injured in training, can't they? That's always a risk. I don't think it's the right approach to be scared of playing your best players against Wigan, and I think he'll go as strong as he can. There's another. I don't think this will be a decisive factor, but there's another factor to considering that Rhinos reserves playing their grand final on Saturday, the day after the Wigan game, and I don't think it would be fair to pull players out of that game to throw them into the Wigan game just to rest first team players. I think Leeds should give the second string the best opportunity to win their competition. Obviously, he's not going to risk anyone who's half fit, Ash Hanley or Connor, if they're not 100%. But I can't see him making big changes, and I don't think it'd be the right thing to do if he did.
Yeah, if Leeds do finish fourth, which now looks fairly likely, they'll play St Helens after they were beaten convincingly by Leigh in the end. I mean, that was a 10th different halfback combination picked by Paul Wellens. Jack Wellesby and Moses Mbye in there. I don't think it worked. Johnny Lomax came on towards the end, but the game was slipping from that point. I think Paul Rowley said it really well at the start of the Sky Sports show about you just have to be physical to beat St Helens, and with the greatest respect, they don't throw that much shape at you. And I think we saw that play out in effect on Friday night. Look, is that a fair reflection, Sam C?
Yeah, I think Saints are just such a strange team in terms of I think I look back to the game against Wigan and the moment where Bevan French claims the ball on his line and then offloads it all in one motion. And that's such a risky thing to do, because if it goes wrong, you've basically given St Helens a try there. But Wigan have the confidence in their own ability to do it, and then also the confidence that their defence can back themselves up if they make an error. And I think they're the sort of things that win games, whereas Saints they don't necessarily have the confidence to go and try and win a game. They just want to stay in a game for as long as possible, and then they'll take what opportunity they can get, and they just don't have any sort of conviction. And that obviously comes from the fact that they don't have a settled spine. And also as players, if you're getting moved around every single week, you're not going to be at full confidence, because you maybe even start doubting yourself where your best position is. Jack Wellesby clearly knows that he's going to be England's fullback in the Ashes, and he's probably level with maybe the likes of Lockie Miller and Jai Field. He's probably the best fullback in the Super League. Yeah, he's getting pulled here, there, and everywhere. I know the loose forward thing was because obviously Morgan Knowles was out, but putting him in the halves just diminishes all his talents at fullback. And then you're kind of looking at what else he's got in the halves. Moses Mbye is a hooker who's heading to the Queensland Cup next year, I think. So you're playing second grade Australian player. You've got George Whitby waiting in the wings who offers the kicking game, which is the only reason why Mbai is effectively in the team. Mbai offers a good kicking game, but Whitby's got that, and he's got plenty more. And when he's coming in games early this season, played in the Good Friday Derby, on 2 games' notice, and was fine. Got a good run of games, and he's been effectively left on the sidelines, and it just doesn't really make any sense. And I think Paul Wellens doesn't know what his best spine is, and he's almost too scared to make the call because they know that if they can just stick in games, they might have a chance. But when a team goes ahead of you, if you go in front against St Helens, you rarely get caught. And I think when you look at the fact they might play Leeds are big, physical, and move the ball. I think that's an easy win for Leeds. And I think most of the playoff teams will fancy themselves against St Helens. And I think Friday night as well showed that. Leigh, they just got the nose in front, and then from then on, it was pretty much plain sailing for them.
Yeah, I mean, Paul Wellens was asked after the game what he felt his best spine was, and he just said, I'd prefer to keep that in-house. But I think I agree with it. I don't think he knows. The 10th combination in the halves was pretty telling. And with George Whitby sat on the sidelines, you're just sort of thinking, I don't think he knows which way to go. And, penultimate round of the season that's pretty alarming, isn't it?
It's worth noting as well, they've had 10 combinations, but they've not necessarily, it's not been through injuries. Yeah. They've not had, you look at Huddersfield, who've had half of their spine out all season, and then they'll get one back and then they'll lose it. And that they've had to make changes because of that. Since, obviously, Wellesby was out for a period, but they haven't had, loads of injuries in there. It's just kind of been just changing it up almost for the sake of, well, this might work this week, it might not work. I think it does look a bit directionless, which feels quite harsh to say, but I think it's probably true.
Yeah, for me, you mentioned Mbai going to the Q Cup as well. I think he might be the man to come out this week. You throw George Whitby in just to play more of that scrum half role. I'd put Jack Wellesby back to fullback. I'd play Whitby and Lomax in the halves and Clark at 9, and I'd bring Tristan Saylor off the bench. As I've said before, I really like him coming off the bench as that impact player, but also he's played it a couple of times this season, playing hooker.
Yeah, Saylor off the bench reminds me a little bit of when Mikey Lewis came off the bench in the international series at the end of last year. Obviously, I'm not sure, it might have been 2023, but Lewis he came on at hooker and he did have a lot of impact, and he was kind of that X factor. Saylor does that. He brings the running threat, and I think you can't play him at fullback because Wellesby's the better player, and he's not a half. You also can't really put him on the wing. So I think if you want to use him, you've got to use him in that impact role. And when Wellesby came back from his injury against Huddersfield, that was where they played him. And yeah, it's Huddersfield. They were already losing by 30, 40 points, but he looked really sharp there. And I think you've got a game against a team that you should beat. I mean, Castleford looked defeated. Their grand final was against Wakefield. They won that. And then last week, on Friday, they were terrible. And I think they're probably going to be terrible again. I think Chris Chester knows that there's so many players leaving that team and you can't really get a tune out of it. So, yeah, like you said, throw in Whitby, give him some confidence, because you're probably going to have to call him in the playoffs because he may well be the answer. And Saylor playing at 9 against a tired Castleford when he comes off the bench, I think that spells points for me. So I'd agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, Pete, Sam said Leeds beat Saints easy in the playoffs. Is that something you agree with?
I don't know. Some of you watched Leeds against St Helens in the past 7 years.
I think they're the only team that Saints can beat out there at the moment.
Yeah,
top.
Yeah, but
yeah,
they do it routinely under any circumstances. Saints beat Leeds. Saints are in good form. Saints are in bad form. Saints have a load of injuries. Saints are full strength. Leeds are full strength. Whatever happens, Leeds can't beat Saints. They just can't. They just go away from everything that's good about them when they play Saints. And maybe they'll end that this week, but I wouldn't put a great deal of money on it. I think Saints would be delighted to be travelling to Leeds in the playoff, or at least playing Leeds in the playoffs. I think they'll go into it confident and knowing how to win that game. It's just the question is, can Leeds find the form that they've shown for most of this season when it really matters against a team who know how to beat them. It's going to be a really interesting game, but one thing I don't think it's going to be is an easy Leeds win.
Yeah, Sam, you covered Hull KR Wakefield for us. I know Willie Peters was absolutely raging after the game, but tell us about it. Was it an uncharacteristic Hull KR performance, or do Wakefield deserve a lot of credit?
I think a bit of both. I mean, the 18-0 scoreline at half time, I think everybody was stunned. Wakefield were just brilliant in that first half. Mason Lino was just absolutely class. Yeah, Hull KR just had no attacking threat. The pack was dominated. Mike McMeekan and Caius Fartilli was just too strong for him. And yeah, Wakefield do deserve the credit. Darryl Powell has transformed that side. But yeah, it was an off day for Hull KR, and one that you could see coming. I think last few weeks have not been as great as they have been across the season, and I think it just kind of capitulated on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, Pete, how do you describe this Wakefield team? Because, you know, they've gone from being beaten handily by Castleford to beating the league leaders the week after. What word can you describe that other than inconsistent?
Well, they haven't really been that inconsistent, have they? They've generally been pretty good all season, whether they've won or lost. They've had problems against Saints over the course of the season. Saints have been a team that they've struggled against, but everybody else they've competed with, and they've got that sort of performance in them, haven't they? They showed against Leeds a few weeks ago that especially at home they can be a dangerous team. I think they went out and approached it like a cup tie, didn't they? They knew that they needed to win it to secure or to be favourites for that last playoff spot going into the last round. And I thought they just got everything right. They just played really, really well. And Hull KR had an off day. And as Sam says, that's maybe been coming. I think it's a worrying result for Hull KR playing like that 2 weeks out from the playoffs starting. You'd still think they've got to win one game at home against the lowest ranked team in the playoffs, surviving in the playoffs, and you'd still fancy them to do that. But I think there'll be some soul searching going on in their camp this week. Just they were so utterly outclassed, and in the second half, when Wakefield obviously sat back a little bit, they never really looked like pulling the game from the fire, did they? So, you know, I think it's a great result for Wakefield. Highlights just what a good job Darryl Powell's done with them this season, and they're not going to be easy beats in the playoffs. That's for sure. It's quite remarkable to think that we could well have Leigh versus Wakefield in a playoff eliminator in a couple of weeks' time, which is when you consider they've both been relegated from Super League and had a spell in the Championship. It's I'm going to say it's good for the competition.
Yeah, Sam C, with your Hull KR hat on, are they running out of steam?
I think Hull KR, if you look at Hull KR, was by far the best team sort of rounds 8 through 16, maybe, like that, the mid-season, and they just seem to have peaked too early, really. And if you look back at it, I'm not sure how you avoid it, because you can't go out there and say, don't put 100% in, because that's nonsensical. You go full tilt on every game. But I think if you look at it, like the way Wigan have sort of tapered their season, yeah, obviously I don't think they'll have been happy to be losing or putting in shoddy performances, but they're really coming in with a head of steam now. Whereas Hull KR they just seem to have completely dropped off. And I think there's the long season element in terms of they went to the Challenge Cup final, but I think you can only use that excuse so often. Like Wigan have had a Vegas trip in there as well. I'm not sure that Challenge Cup's that relevant sort of this far on down the line. They've had the break as well, which everyone else had, but I think they're just they've really tapered off, and Jesse Sue's been a massive miss recently. I think you look at what Hull KR's game's built on, it's physical and it's getting on top early, and him not being there has had a massive impact. But again, that's one player. And then you look at Mikey Lewis, I think he's got 3 assists in his last 6. And before that, he was, I think, on about 35 try contributions in 20 or something like that. So there's a massive drop-off there. And it just seems that it's all kind of, maybe it's the pressure of being league leaders and everyone now is taking up a notch to play them, or maybe they have just fatigued. And I think that they really need this week off, but they'll want to go into this week off having beaten Warrington. If you put in another similar performance like that against Warrington, it may well be enough to win because Warrington are even worse. But they just want a performance so that they can kind of have that first week off in the playoffs and like really refocus. Because I think whoever travels to Craven Park in the playoffs will fancy it, because the form guide will probably favour the away side at the moment.
Yeah, I watched Hull FC Warrington on Saturday, and trust me, there's no way this Warrington team goes and rolls over Hull KR on Thursday night, whatever other side turns up. But look, in terms of the grand final, Pete, Sam, who's your favourite? Because I mean, personally, I think I'm back in Wigan now. As Sam said, Bevan French, that factor he brings, and Wigan just turned on at the right time, looking imperious now. They're just growing extra leg at this time of the year. Who are you backing?
I think Wigan as well. I think I'm really interested to see what happens this week against Leeds. And I think there's probably going to be a pinch of salt in terms of the team lineups. Like you say, what have Leeds got to play for? But we've both kind of said that we think Brad Arthur's going to go strong because he wants that performance. But I think Wigan look incredible. They've got that home semi-final. And if it was me making a pick at the moment, I'd say it's Wigan Leeds, and I think Wigan win it. I think Leeds can go to Craven Park and win. If you're looking at what Hull KR are doing at the moment, I know Leeds have had their off game, but it seems to be Leeds having one off game, whereas Hull KR are having a string of off games. So I'd be going Wigan to beat Leeds as if I was making a pick at the moment.
Yeah, I think Wigan will be in the grand final, and I think they'll be very hard to beat at Old Trafford, having been there and done it in such convincing fashion the last couple of years. I don't think they've conceded a try, have they, in the last 2 grand finals. I think they'll be very difficult to beat at Old Trafford. And like Sam says, Hull KR have been the better team over the course of the season as a whole, but are Hull KR a better team than Wigan when Wigan have got Bevan French in the side? And I don't think they are. And Wigan have just looked so good since French came back. I can't see any reason for betting against them. As to who they'll play, I don't know. It could Hull KR at home. They've got to win one game, haven't they, to get to the grand final? You'd have to say home advantage would make them favourites, but Leeds have been there and won already this year. I think they're capable of doing it, and I think if Leeds can build some momentum, they just seem to know how to frustrate Hull KR and how to play against them, a bit like Saints do against Leeds. So I think if it was Hull KR versus Leeds, I think that'd be a very interesting semi-final. But over the course of the season, you'd say it still looks like probably a Wigan Hull KR final. But I don't know. I'm not 100% sure that Hull KR are going to get there.
Yeah, Sam, do you agree with
that? Apologies there. I think Wigan's to lose. And even if Jack Farman this week absolutely class against Cass. If one of the key men do go down, they've got a brilliant backup in Farman. I think they're just too strong overall. Like you say, Hull KR just have to win one game, but then it's winning that final on the biggest stage, and they'll have last year in the heads. They will use it as a momentum and confidence boost that they can, or motivation that they can get the win. But yeah, I think Wigan are just too strong.
Yeah, I mean, one team that's not been mentioned there at all, but has beaten every team at the top there is Leigh Leopards. Look, are they the dark horses? Can anyone see them reaching that showpiece at Old Trafford?
Well, their problem is that they're going to have to go to Wigan, aren't they, in the semi-final? I know they've won there already this season, albeit in Golden Point 1-0. But you know, if we're all tipping Wigan to win it, then obviously Leigh probably won't get to the final. I think if Leigh did get to the final, they'd give a good account of themselves. But it's hard to win as the grand final. We've seen since Leeds won it in 2004, we haven't seen a new winner on the winner's name on the trophy, and various teams have tried. Catalans a couple of times, Salford, Hull, Castleford, Hull KR. They've all come up short on the big day. It's a very difficult thing to win, and especially when it's your first taste of it. So I don't see. I think Leigh have been great this year, but I don't see them as grand final winners.
Dempsey, just give us a word on the job Adrian Lam has done. Just consistently, this team turn up. Just explain how good a job he's done.
I think the thing with Leigh as well, like you look at the amount of turnover they had at the start of the season, like not just in terms of like the players going up, but like they've signed so many players this year, and like they're not signing them just to sit on the bench and like bulk out the squad. Like they're being like really big players. Ethan O'Neill, I mean, he's had a few injuries, but he's got to be among. He'll be a contender. I don't think he will be in the team of the season, but he's got to be up there. Jofa Hangawi, middle of the season signing, he's been massive for them. And I think he kind of arrived at the point where the rest of the signings have kind of gelled. Adrian Lam, was saying more or less for the first 10 weeks, he was like, oh, just kind of wait. Like it's gonna, once it clicks, it'll click. And you got to the point where you turned up in press conference, he says it, and you're like, oh, there's that line again. And I reckon I probably was doubting him. I kind of thought, well, you know, you can only say it so many times, but then it has clicked and everything's kind of come together. Lockie Lamb, I think, is leading the assist chart by a mile. And yeah, that's probably because he's the creative half and O'Brien's the kicking half. But it's not just everything sort of works. Bailey Hodgson as a signing, they've obviously signed him in his depth, but he's ended up having to play the fullback role. I think he was a bit shaky on Friday night, but he's been exceptional as well. And I think Lamb just manages to get the best out of players. Look at Amila Hanley, like Wigan kind of had him on the scrap heap, and he's come in at Leigh and he's been one of the best centres. He's getting England shouts at the moment. Whether he actually gets in the squad's another question, but he's certainly in the frame. Keenan Brand is a player who seemingly given up on rugby league. He'd gone down the Love Island route, and he wasn't really. You kind of thought, well, that's him done, and all of a sudden he's sort of sixth on the try scoring sheet. I think he's got 15 or 16 this season. Just everything that is. I think there's a few coaches that can just get the best out of players. I think Adrian Lam is one of those that every player he takes them to a new level. Owen Trout looks to be in the England squad, and he can play second or forward or in the prop. He just enhances players so much, and they are really hard to beat. But like Pete's mentioned, the problem is they're going to have to go to Wigan in all likelihood. But they've done that, and they have won. I think the one thing that Leigh would have to be perfect.
Beating them home and away as well.
Yeah, and I think Leigh on both those occasions have been perfect, and I think they would have to be perfect again. I think even though they kind of quite easily beat Saints on Friday, there was a lot of handling errors, and I don't think that would cut it against this current Wigan. But I think they're definitely a live shout. I expect they'll go for it over this weekend, and is it Huddersfield they play? Should be meat and drink for them, and I think they'll go into the playoffs in one of the form teams.
Yeah, let's just look ahead to this final round then, and I feel like I need to qualify that Warrington comment earlier on. Just look, they were just so poor against Hull FC. just really poor. I was shocked by how poor they were. I mean, I hadn't seen them for the last few weeks, but Sam Bear just contested this after the game, this notion, but I really did feel like they gave up at points. Just when Lachlan Fitzgibbon got sin-binned for a high shot on Sam Esse, Hull scored 3 tries in that 10-minute period. I think two were back-to-back. And you could just see, I really just felt like at times they were throwing a towel in the effort areas where the scramble wasn't there. Aidan Caesar's try was just as easy as you like. I really just don't see how Warrington motivate themselves to come back to East Yorkshire again on Thursday night and play the league leaders. That's going to be a simple one for KR, is it?
Fitzgibbon's probably going to be banned as well, isn't he? I think we've not had disciplinary yet, but SA left the field, so that's automatically 3 points. So I think they're going to be missing him, and he probably has been one of their better players. So yeah, I think it's almost like throw the kids in time. Kai Taylor-Ray was one of the only ones who stood out on Saturday. But how many young players can you throw in and it not be harmful? Because even though this whole KR team's out of form, we have seen them put on some huge scores. So if they are in that notion of giving up, and you've got maybe one too many kids in there, then it could be another blowout, and that's not helpful to them at all. We've also got to wonder whether he plays George Williams as well. I think the notion is that he's going to be fine for the Ashes and that he's kind of all right. He was named in the squad, but you just try and get him a game to get some form and almost as if you want your captain just to come and take some accountability. I think him being on the field would be somewhat of a statement, but they're just limping over the line, aren't they? You look at teams like Salford have been begging for the season to end. I think Warrington probably want to end more.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Look, League Leaders Shield, I think it's 41 points now, the points difference, which, stranger things have happened, but you really can't see Hull KR throwing that away. They're going to want to win this in style, are they not?
Yeah, of course they are. Yeah, at home in front of their own fans. I mean, they're not, as we've said, they're not in the best of form at the moment, but they'll be far too good for Warrington. They've got a week off coming up. I think they can throw everything at it. There is that little bit of jeopardy with Wigan still being more or less in touch, but I think it'll be a big Hull KR win and a memorable night for them.
Yeah, Hull FC Catalan. Personally, I see Hull FC winning this, but I don't think it'll be enough to get in the 6. I think Catalan's final last hurrah was against Leeds Rhinos by the looks of it, so I don't know what sort of team they're going to see on Thursday night, but Wakefield are going to have too much for Salford, I think, as well. Would you agree with that, Sam? B?
Yeah, I think Hull FC can put in the best performance of the season. I think it just depends on Wakefield and Salford. Wakefield are just not going to lose that. I think the 6 is already made up. But credit to Hull FC. They've had such a changing season. John Cartwright's done a great job there. You look at last year when they're second bottom and they're now pushing for playoffs. The change there has been positive, and with the signings that they've made, next year they should be competing again. The likes of Samuel Sony and Jake Arthur, that's his name. Them additions will bolster that side, and I do think next year they will be challenging once again.
Yeah, we spoke a lot about Leeds Rhinos and Wigan, but how do you see it going, Pete, on Friday night?
Well, we'll have to wait and see what team Leeds do put out, won't we? But I think it'll be an interesting game. Leeds have beaten Wigan earlier in the campaign. They have to improve massively from the performance against Catalans. Wigan might not have anything on the line. Almost certainly won't have anything on the line with Hull KR playing the night before, which I think's a bit of an organisational mistake from Super League. Really, they should be kicking off at the same time. But
yeah, same for the top 6 battle as well. Hull FC playing the night before Wakefield. I just don't think makes any sense.
No, it's strange, isn't it? I know they obviously have to announce the the fixtures a certain amount of time in advance, but I think it was a poor decision, that one, and it doesn't make any sense, and that'll have a bearing on what happens at Wigan. I think if we can go full strength and play well, then obviously you'd fancy them to beat Leeds, but I think Leeds are capable of bouncing back. They haven't lost back-to-back league games this season. The response, as Brad Arthur said after Thursday's game, has been pretty good generally this year, and I think Leeds will give a decent account of themselves. But Wigan at home, you'd say they're the favourites, certainly.
Yeah, look, we're starting to get a few deals announced now as we get towards the end of the season. We just had Joe Batchelor leave St Helens this morning. The expectation is he'll be going to LFC, so you can stay across that on Serious About Rugby League. And obviously, Yorkshire Evening Post will be carrying all the Leeds Rhinos, Cast Tigers, and Wakey news. So, yeah, we'll bring this to a close. Thanks for watching, guys. And if you can like this video and subscribe to the channel, that will be much appreciated. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Please like and share, and we'll see you next week.